All right. Hello. Welcome to another basics culinary class. Tonight, I'm very excited to go over some bao. Um, I've made a few here, and I just steamed these off moments ago, and so this is sort of the end product. What we're looking at with this recipe is a bao that you can either make in this format, which is a little bit smaller, and then this we would call a bao zi, or you could make them larger. It really depends on what you want, but the technique is the same, and it all starts with a dough. And so we're looking at a wheat dough here, and wheat was the predominant grain in northern China, and that's how these bao came about. Um, you'll find now the bao format is spread all over the world, and it's very popular, like throughout Indonesia, for example. And the fillings for the bao are just infinite, and that's one of the beautiful things about them is you can fill them with anything. And I'm always interested in these kind of portable foods. Um, like hand pies, and there's just so many varieties throughout the world, and the bao is a really great little portable snack. You see these a lot as street food, um, and then of course in dim sum restaurants and just all over the place. And so what we're going to do today is learn how to make some bao at home. You do, you need a few simple tools, and a steam basket might be one of them, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go ahead and start with the dough. So we'll get this dough working for us. So the dough, we start with some lukewarm or tepid water, and we're using 2/3 of a cup. So I have this measured, and we're going to be adding active dry yeast to it. So when you add active dry yeast to water, you want that water to be about the temperature of your body, and a good way to test that is just put your wrist under the water, and when it feels even with your body temperature, that's what the yeast likes as well. And the yeast, if it's too hot, it'll kill it, and if it's too cold, it just won't activate for quite a while. Yeast is a living microorganism, and it's in suspension when it's dried like this. And so when we add it to the water, they wake up and they're going to start working. And as they breathe, they will create bubbles, and then the bubbles will get our dough to rise. Um, this bao dough, we're going to raise it in two ways: the yeast, and then also baking soda. So there's a little bit of baking soda in here also, and it really helps to just give us that really great fluff that we're looking for in a dough, a bao dough. All right, so you can see that yeast is in there, and I just let that sort of dissolve. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. Um, and so I have my sugar here. And what the sugar does is it feeds the yeast. So the yeast likes to eat sugar. And we're going to really get it revved up here with a couple tablespoons. And so ideally, you'll let this proof. And proofing of the yeast is simply that. You're looking for proof that it is still active. If it's really old or something like that, it may not work. So, the word proof just comes from seeing if it's working. And what it also does is it gives you a little bit of a head start in activating your dough. So while this is proofing a bit, we'll go ahead and put our dry ingredients together, and then come back and check on the yeast and see if it's starting to bubble for us at all. So for your flour, we're going to go ahead and use some bread flour. And bread flour is a good flour for this in that it has a little bit of a higher gluten content, and the gluten gives us some of that nice um, structure that we want. You need a pretty structured dough to hold up to the steaming, which we're going to put these batter through. All right, so here we go. We're going 1 3/4, and whenever you're baking or making a dough or something like that, and measuring, you want to level your measure, and I do that simply by running running it against the bag like that. But you can also use a tool, well, even like a knife or something, right? Or a spatula, and just make sure you're leveling, and you'll get a more accurate measure that way. Okay, and then we've got 3 more quarters, so this is a 1/4 cup, so I'll do 3 of these. Okay, so there's our bread flour. And next we'll add the baking soda and the salt. And then I'm just going to whisk that stuff up to make sure it's evenly distributed. And then with this proofing deal, we're not going to get anything for a few minutes. And sometimes it takes a little longer to proof in colder weather, which we are having right now, and it's not really warm where I'm standing now. So, but it would be like 5 to 10 minutes. This would be bubbling up, and you'll just see bubbles appear on the top here. But it's not going to hurt anything to put it in now. It just might take a little longer to rise in the end. All right, and so also we're going to put a tablespoon of neutral oil in with our yeast and sugar mixture. So I'm using canola oil here. When we say neutral oil, we're just looking for an oil that's not going to carry a lot of flavor with it. In this recipe, for example, we're using sesame oil in our filling, and the sesame oil is a very, flavorful oil. So it would not count as a neutral oil, whereas canola, grapeseed, sunflower, these are neutral oils. So we have that tablespoon of oil in there. And then we're going to go ahead and just add that to our dry ingredients. And what I like to just kind of whisk it in to a point to integrate. And then you can use a wooden spoon or a spatula. I like a wooden spoon for this. And I'm going to stir it and create our dough. So we're just getting all those little dry bits together. And this is a dough that it can be a little bit sticky, and it's a little it's not quite like we did a pasta dough a couple weeks ago, right? And it was kind of hard to knead. I would put this dough somewhere in between the pasta dough and like a traditional bread dough, in that it'll firm up a bit for us beyond bread dough, but it's not going to be as tough as pasta dough, for example. And then we're just going to knead this, and in kneading, you put a little bit of flour, just lightly floured. You don't want to add too much flour because it will dry your dough out, but the flour does help you work with the dough. And then kneading, I use the palm of my hand, and you just want to turn it over, and I kind of go in a circular motion, and just keep pressing with that palm. And what we're looking for is to smooth it out, as well as getting a little bounce Um, so it it would take it should take you about 5 minutes of kneading or so. It's not a real extreme knead here, but you will notice should the texture should smooth out for you a bit, and then you'll know it's kneaded to the point. Where you want it. Um, so bao, the word bao in Chinese means wrapped, and so that's what we're looking at is a filling wrapped in this dough. Um, it the origin of bao sort of comes out of another bun called a mantao, and that is translates to head. And the mantao um, is an unfilled bao. It's just the dough. And at the credit given, the credit for creating the bao is given to a military leader from the 3rd century. And he came up with the idea to mimic a, uh, a severed head. So you, yeah, probably didn't know this class was going to get into severed heads, but that you never know. So there was a tradition of sacrifice, um, and this military leader came upon a river, and there's 2 versions of this story. And so in one version, he comes to the river, and there's a deity guarding the river, and he's told that he needs to sacrifice 50 soldiers and throw their heads into the river. And so this was in the Sichuan province of China, and they had been quelling a revolution. And everyone was really tired, and he said, "Well, I don't really want to kill 50 of the soldiers. Let's make a fake head and stuff it with some really tasty stuff, and see if that appeases the deity." Now, the other version of this story is there's an opposing force on the other side of the river that says, "Look, you need to send us the heads of 50 of your soldiers, or we won't let you cross. Put them on a raft and send them across." And same story, he creates the bao, made these giant bao, head size, stuffs them full of delicious fillings, and sends the raft across. And this appeases the force on the other side. And in the other version, it appeases they throw them in the river, and it appeases this river deity, and the soldiers are able to safely cross the river. Okay, so in the time it takes to tell stories about severed heads, you have your bao dough. So with doughs like this, I always like to give them a little poke, and then when they pop back, I know they're ready. You can see I've got some nice smoothness going here. Has a good slap back sound. So I think we're in good shape. So what I will do here is put a little bit of oil, and again, we're using this neutral oil, and I have a little in my palm here. Just going to rub it over the dough and put it in a bowl, and then we're going to cover the bowl, and you can cover the bowl with a damp towel, or you can use a little bit of plastic wrap, and then you let it rise for an hour or even 2 hours. Again, the temperature of the room it's rising in will sort of dictate how long your dough is going to rise, need to rise, but you're looking for it to kind of double, and you want to feel it really, when you press into it, soften quite a bit. And that is what's going to happen, is the dough is going to soften and be pretty easy to work with. in the end, this dough sort of reminds me of like a cinnamon roll dough or something like that. It has a really soft texture um, to work with, so it's great dough to work with. Um, so that's our dough. And so while your dough is rising, you can put together the filling. And so what this filling I've designed here is a pork filling, but you could substitute for the ground pork, you could substitute any ground meat, you could substitute tofu, you could substitute chopped up shrimp, all kinds of stuff. And we're just using the ground meat just because it's really easy to work with. You could also cube up some meat of your choice and use it here as small dice. So I'm just going to grab my cutting board, and I'm putting this anti-slip mat down first. And a wet towel also is always a good idea for anti-slip. All right, so that's a spoiler alert there. That's some finished stuff. So anyway, so what I have here is some garlic, and the garlic is soaking in warm water, and this is just a great little trick for getting the peel off of that garlic without it sticking to your fingers or to your knife. So I have that soaking for a few minutes. I've got a little knob of ginger, and ginger is one of my favorites. In C, we have this really beautiful ginger here to work with. So I have fresh ginger, I have garlic, I have chili flakes. Now the chili flakes, if you don't like too much spice, you can omit the chili flakes. I don't feel this recipe is overly spicy, but it does have a little bit of heat to it because it has also white pepper, which can be spicy, you know. So I've got the white pepper, the chili flakes. And with the chili flakes, what I was going to say is you can use chili oil also, which is like chili flakes suspended in oil, and that's really good stuff. So either way, dry chili flakes or the chili oil. And if you don't, if you don't have either of those things, even just a shot of like chili sauce or sriracha, something like that would work well here. And then we have some cornstarch, which we'll use to thicken, some salt, or I'm sorry, some sugar here, and then soy sauce and hoisin. And then, of course, sesame oil and our scallions or green onions here. Okay, so let's cook. So you want a little bit of a little saute pan, frying pan. Here I have a small cast iron pan. I'm going to put my sesame oil down. And then I have some pork, and I'm going to grab that. I will like that. I always forget one thing. That's my method. So here it is. So this is some lovely fresh ground pork from the market here. Basics Market has 5 locations, by the way, and around the Portland area, and each location has a really great meat market. And so that's where I got this ground pork, and they'll grind up anything for you, you know. So there's that. All right. So we'll get that pork sizzling. And green onions or scallions, they go in at the end. Let's go ahead and get some garlic in there. The recipe calls for 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to go ahead and use 3 just because these are smaller cloves, and we want to make sure to have that nice garlic flavor in there. As always, I like to talk about having a little compost bowl on your works workstation just really helps keep things a little bit organized, and having things pre-measured is also handy. We call this mise en place, everything in its place, and it just makes your cook go a little easier. So what we're looking to do here with the pork is brown it off. And it's going to happen in just a few minutes. And then I'm going to mince the garlic. And throw that in. So we have a garlic mince. And then we'll look at the ginger. Ginger, well, I've rinsed it already, and so the peel, if you're using organic ginger, you really don't need to worry about the peel too much. But you know, I'll usually kind of lightly peel it. If it, I use organic ginger mostly. I mean, one like with any root, I think it's good to use organic in anything, you know, really. But with root vegetables and the like, you know, organic is the way to go. And then with ginger in particular, you're looking at the skin actually has a lot of real healthy probiotics for us. Um, and so a little bit of the ginger peel is actually pretty good for you. All right, so we'll mince this in. And you're looking at, you know, I think we put like a half an inch, I might have said in the recipe of ginger, something like that. So a small knob, yeah, half inch. So it equals a couple teaspoons of minced ginger, 2 to 3 teaspoons. You know, depending on your love of ginger, you can add more or less. And again, you know, the filling is really fun to experiment with. You put all kinds of stuff. There are people who make peanut butter and jelly baths. You know, you can make dessert baths. It's a really neat way to utilize leftovers. If you have like a little bit of leftover curry or something like that, this could be a great way to just throw it in a dough and get a second meal out of it, another unique meal. So here's our ginger, and pop that in the pan. And so this is starting to smell good, right? And I'm going to go ahead and add chili flakes, white pepper, okay, and now I have my 2 tablespoons of tamari here. And so I am using tamari. I might have misspoke earlier and said soy sauce, but of course soy sauce would work here. Or cocoa aminos, Bragg's, like liquid aminos would work. Anything you use in that soy sauce realm will work here. Low sodium soy sauce, if you're watching your sodium, is a nice way to go. I really like tamari. Tamari was the original soy sauce, and it's what comes up off of miso. So when miso is being made, the liquid that rises to the top is the tamari, and it's just pure soy. Soy sauce has the addition of wheat, which gives it a little bit of a different flavor profile. And people, of course, who are gluten intolerant can handle tamari because it doesn't have that wheat in it. And I find the tamari just has a more rounded, kind of almost sweeter flavor to me. So I drop the sugar in there. I think it's like a half a tablespoon there, and then the cornstarch. And this is simply to thicken up our filling a little bit. It's going to hold everything together because when we're scooping and filling, we want it to kind of hold together, right? So you just want to break up that cornstarch. Looks like the pork is all nice and brown. So we'll throw our slurry. This is a slurry. When you add cornstarch to a liquid, it is called a slurry. And so we'll add our slurry there. And as soon as that cornstarch and suspended in the tamari hits the heat, it binds up, and that's what we're looking for. And that's what it's doing. So it's just holding all that yummy stuff together. And so at this point, you just want to coat all the meat or whatever you're using with your binding mixture. And then we'll go ahead and look at our scallions. This averages about two or three. You want about a half a cup chopped scallions, or sliced. So I'll get this white part in there first because it can cook a little bit with the meat. I'll get the greens in there, and you know, we're using our proper knife technique, gripping the blade between the thumb and forefinger right at that balance point at the top of the handle. I'm utilizing my claw with my left hand, holding the scallions together, and just cutting right down carefully. And we'll pop those in. So we got our scallions, and then this is the hoisin, and I'm using hoisin sauce. You can use oyster sauce is another good one here, or even I've done this with gochujang, is a really delicious Korean fermented chili paste, which is you can add a little like tamari or water to that and liquefy it, add that in. That would be good here. Or plum sauce is another option. Any of those things, but like hoisin, oyster sauce, plum sauce, these things would all work for your filling. So there we have the lovely filling. Smells really nice. Okay. So at this point, you want to let that cool a little bit. The dough is, still rising because it hasn't been quite an hour yet. But luckily, through the magic of television, I have some dough I made before the class, which has risen. And so we'll have a look at this. So this is half of the dough. The other half is right here in these 6 bao. So this will make you a dozen bao or baozi, of this size. And so you can see the size is just, fits in the palm of my hand. And this is a really user-friendly size. But as I mentioned before, if you want to go bigger, just use, twice as much dough and twice as much filling when you apply the technique that we are about to delve into here. Okay, so we've got our dough, and as you can see, it's really gotten nice and soft. I'm going to use a little bit of flour and dust my surface here, and I'll just do it. It's going to go right onto this cutting board. So you want to make a rope or a snake, or I guess we could, a dragon's tail, right? So something like this, and keep in mind, this is just a half batch, right? So I'm going to get 6 pieces out of this. Um, and so what I like to do is I'll cut it in half. So I have 2 equal pieces, and then I can cut this into thirds, and I can, this way I can get it a little more even. Um, now, so now there's my 6, and as I mentioned, here's the other 6, or we've already bowed out here. And then you just want to make some nice balls, and kind of at this point, the more of a sphere you get, the more even it will be when you roll it out. You'll get a better disc. So, you know, and at this point as well, you can get an idea of the size. And if you're looking to get real even bow, you can redistribute some of the dough. It looks like I did pretty well here, but say, well, let's say this one does look up maybe a tad large and this one a tad small. So you can just add, um, you can move your dough around a little bit at this point, and then you could, do one of these shell games, I guess it's called, right? Where's the bow dough? Okay, so we'll go ahead and you use your damp towel or your plastic wrap and keep your dough balls covered because you don't want them to dry out too much while you're working. So I have a little bit of flour now, and then a rolling pin is handy here. Not necessary. I mean, you could do this all with your fingers, but a rolling pin makes things a lot quicker and pretty easy. Again, just like with ravioli, you kind of want to pay attention to the edges because that's what we're going to be gathering together. And that's the area that can tend to really get thick. So you want to keep the edges at least even with the rest of it because when you're rolling like this, what tends to happen is the dough will move out to the edges and the edges will be thick. So just pay a little bit of attention to that. Give those edges a little extra tweak, and you can do that with the rolling pin, and you can do that with your fingers. And you're just looking for a circle. And so this is our circle here. And then we've got our filling, and this is the filling that I made previously. It's already cooled, and so it's going to hold it together well for us, and also it's easy to handle. And so with this recipe, this formula altogether, for the 12 baozi, you'll use about a tablespoon of filling per bao, and it works out to where that will pretty much fill up your bao. And if you have any extra filling, you can just eat it. I've heard of that. Okay, so we've got our filling right in the middle, and now you just gather it up. And there are restaurants that specialize in bao dumplings like this, and they'll do like 18 folds is a lucky number in China, and you'll see some places will have those 18 folds. It is with the smaller bao or baozi, it's pretty tricky, but it can be done. I have gotten the 18 folds, but it's not necessary, of course. Just get as many as you can, and so you do that fold, and then you do a little twist. Okay, so let's do another one. So roll, get your circle, And then while this is happening, we should get our steam ready. So let me go ahead, I'll make one more and then we'll talk a little bit about the method for cooking the bao. Okay, there's our tablespoon there, gather. And this is just kind of gathering it up. I mean, I'm definitely, this is challenging, but it's also really fun. You just gather it, pinch it, hold that top, and then give it a little spin, and then that's how you get a nice spiral effect. Okay, so I'm going to change this out for our steam situation. So this is a bamboo steamer, and this is a real nice piece of equipment to have. These are good for cooking vegetables as well, or fish is a very nice item to steam, a real gentle way to cook seafood. So a steam basket, it usually has 2 levels, and I have the 2 levels here. And what I've done is I've taken some parchment paper. This is simply like the parchment paper you put on a cookie sheet when you're baking. And I cut it into a circle so it fits in there. And that keeps the bao from sticking to the basket. Other methods, you can rig up a steamer also, like if you have a vegetable steamer like this, this can work. And here I just have a skillet with some water in it, and the bamboo steamer fits on. But if I was using this, I could do like this, and then get a bowl or something, a larger bowl than this, and put it over as a lid, something that fits over, and and that would work as a steamer too. Earlier today I made some bao, and all I had was a sieve, like a round flour sieve, and I put that on top of the big pot and put one of those stainless bowls on it, and it worked really well. So anyway, these bamboo steamers are available at Asian markets. The steamer I have at home is made of aluminum, and it's pretty big, and it has two levels as well. And I got it very affordably at an Asian market. So you just want to rev up your water under the basket, whatever kind you're using, and I'll usually just do that with the lid, and then I'll have my basket to the side, and here I can continue to put together some bao.
Chef, we have a question from Lisa. She'd like to know if you could make these in a rice steamer, like in a rice cooker, perhaps.
Oh, that's I really don't know. You could definitely try. I wonder. It may be a little too. Yeah, I guess you might be able to do that. I mean, I don't know. You could do it and tell me. Tell us, write us an email and let us know. I suppose if you put your some sort of perforated deal down in your rice cooker, and then put a little liquid on the bottom, I suppose it would work, because you get the heat created and you'd have the lid. So probably, I want to say probably. I can't guarantee the results on that one. Another way you can cook your bao is in the oven, and if you do the oven, it's good, and it's just different. The dough tends to be a little more bready. It still tastes great, and it looks really nice because the oven gives them a beautiful color, and that's just another a method. And for the oven, you just put them on a sheet pan, with the parchment, or maybe lightly oil your sheet pan, 350 degrees, about 20 minutes. Maybe check them at 15. again, depending on how your oven cooks. And, and they're nice that way as well. It's just a little bit of a different texture as far as how the dough is. So here we are gathering and turning and pinching and a twist.
Chuck, we have a question about whether you could freeze these at this point and cook them later.
Yeah, so the question is, can these be frozen at this stage and then cooked later? And that's definitely yes. That would be that's a really great thing to do, and it's fun, to do something like this when maybe you have extra hands in your kitchen, and you can do a project and knock out a whole bunch of these and then freeze them, and then it's just a really nice, easy snack. And that's a great idea. And what I would recommend in in freezing most things, I like to place them on a sheet pan, separate, like IQF, individually quick frozen. So you put it on the sheet pan individually, or separate, I should say. Put that in your freezer, and then after it's frozen, you can remove them and then put them in a bag or something. But they won't stick together as if you put these all in a bag. Well, they're still soft like this, they would tend to stick together. So we've got some steam going now, and we've got some bao here. So I'm just going to pop that right on, and in they go. And you can see I have a little bit of space in between the bao. And in a bamboo steamer like this, you can fit like 6 of these per level. So you could really do a batch of 12 all at once. I do find that I get the best results when I just do one layer with the steamer, because otherwise the bottom layer cooks faster than the top layer. Sometimes if I am trying to do a bunch at once, I'll do a flip-flop in the middle, and I'll change the top and the bottom to get a more even cook. But I'd recommend just one level if you're not in a rush of cooking for hundreds of people. Yeah, so that's it. So these guys, they'll take about 9 minutes or so, and what we're looking for is you're going to look for a firmness. They shouldn't be sticky any longer. That you'll be able to tell it's cooked through when it's not sticking to your fingers. So what I usually do after 8 minutes or so, 7-8 minutes, check them. Pull the top, have a look, give them a little poke, and see where they're at. Or do we have any more questions?
If you were using an alternative like tofu or shrimp, at what point would you put those into the filling mixture?
Oh, okay. So the question is about alternative proteins, tofu, shrimp, things like that. When would you introduce those in the filling? And I would say just at the same time, as you would the pork in this recipe, you can pretty much just follow this recipe to start, and you could make your substitutions if you're using a different sort of protein in that spot where the pork goes. Same deal, half a pound of whatever, and and see how that works, and that works for me. So I just introduce it at that same protein point. Let's have a look. I guess I'm the lucky one who gets to try it, right? I'm going to go ahead and cut right through the middle just so we can see what it looks like inside. And so this is what we've got, this little bun. And I got a pretty good even distribution of the dough on this one. It looks good, even all around. And you can dip these in all kinds of stuff. vinegars, chili oils, tamari, of course, or soy sauce, um, peanut sauces, anything you know, any sort of dipping sauces you enjoy, or just like pure sriracha is good here, or a mixture. A dipping sauce I like is like soy sauce and honey and a little squirt of sriracha is a nice quick dipping sauce.
How can you tell if they're done?
Hmm. Well, we had a question, how can you tell if they're done? Um, the, the bowl should be dry and airy. Um, and so you shouldn't have a real doughy aspect to it. So we can check these now and see where we're at. And so, of course, I wouldn't recommend just sticking your hand over hot steam. Um, I'm always doing things like that, and then often regret it. But tongs is another good tool here, and so we can pull one off, and this would be to test for doneness. Um, you see, it's not really sticking to my hand at all. Um, it's light. It's really light and airy. In fact, it feels like it's just going to float away. Feels great. Um, so I'd say this is really close. It had just a tiny. There's like a tiny little stickiness on my finger. Not much though. So I would say 2 minutes away, and it's there. Um, so what you know the way to tell it's done is you'll just sort of get a feel for when the dough is right, and it really does fluff up quite a bit, and it just feels dry, um, and that's how you can tell it's done.
And Anne would like to know, should the water be boiling or just simmering?
Hmm. Um, well, what you know, whatever will what you just want that steam. You want it kind of boiling. You want a good heat source, right? You want a really powerful steam. So I say a kind of a light boil, a heavy simmer, but boiling really. And that being said, you want to keep an eye on your water level. If you're using a shallower pan like this, make sure to check it once in a while if you're doing several batches so that your water doesn't evaporate.
And one of our viewers would like to know if you could repeat the steps of cooking in the oven again, the temperature, and how long.
Oh yeah, sure. So if you're doing these in the oven, you'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Set them out on a baking tray, and again, just like as we do with the steam basket, you want to leave some space in between because they will grow a bit, right? And so you'll place them on your baking sheet, either lightly oiled or use a piece of parchment paper under them, and and once your oven is at 350, put them in the oven, and it's about 15-20 minutes. And again, in the oven, the way to tell they're done is they'll have a golden brown, and they'll have a good. They get pretty crispy in the oven. Um, so you can definitely tell when they're done in the oven, just again by the touch and by the look of them, because they'll have that nice like golden brown uh, color that we look for in a baked good. Okay, I'd say these are done. And you can see they grew quite a bit. Um, so here's the, the difference between a baby bao that hasn't been incubated and a bao that's done.
And Chef Anne would like to know if we're using something else like a steamer with a metal lid, is there a way to prevent the water from dripping into the bath?
Oh, boy, that is a, you know, that's a good one because I think that does happen to me with my metal lid at home. You get a little bit of condensation. Um, what you could try, and because you're asking that question, I'm like, huh, uh, that is a good question. How about if we put like another layer of like the parchment paper over the top, and I think that would keep the water from getting on them, and um, kind of protect them from that side. And that's a really neat question. I think that would be the way to go. So you'd have two circles, put one under your bow and one over your bow, and and that would keep your bow dry. Oh, I guess I have more bows to create here. Make a few more, and so that's kind of what I've got for you. You're welcome to ask more questions. I'm going to continue to put together these remaining couple bao and finish eating this one. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had fun watching me go through this bao making process and can apply it to your own cooking. Please visit us at one of our basics markets for some of your ingredients, and you can keep asking questions about this class or our other classes at basicsmarket.com. We have a website, and on that website, we're posting the classes that we record here, as well as we're doing some short skill videos, which might interest you. So you can always watch these classes again. They're usually posted by the next day, and then they're up. So if you go to the Basics Market website, go to class library, and that's where these classes show up. And then also on the website, there's a whole bunch of recipes there that we put together. So you might find some other interesting things to cook and do. And until next time, thanks again, and happy cooking.